You're looking at the family embarrassment. That's how my daughter-in-law introduced me to her wealthy parents at my son's wedding. Everyone laughed until her father's face went white as he stared at me. Wait, aren't you the woman who bought my company? If you're watching this, hit that like button and subscribe. I want to know how far this story travels. Tell me in the comments where you're hearing this from. My name is Margaret Chen, though most people just call me Maggie. For the past 15 years, I've mastered the art of being invisible in plain sight. Turns out, that was perfect training for what happened at my son Michael's wedding. Michael had been dating Victoria Ashford for 8 months. I'd met her exactly twice before the wedding, brief encounters where she'd asked pointed questions about my quaint little house and whether I'd need financial assistance in my retirement years. Both times, she'd looked at my simple clothes and modest car like she was cataloguing evidence of my inadequacy. The Ashford estate sprawled across 40 acres of Connecticut countryside, a private chapel that seated 300, gardens that probably cost more than most people's homes. Victoria floated down the aisle in a dress worth more than a luxury car, while my son, my brilliant, hard-working son, looked happier than I'd seen him since his father died. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a simple navy dress from Nordstrom, paired with my mother's pearl necklace. Nothing flashy, nothing memorable. I'd learned long ago that true power comes from being underestimated. The ceremony was beautiful, even as Victoria's mother, Catherine, kept shooting me looks like I was a stain on her perfect tableau. But the reception, that's where everything unravelled. The Ashfords had spared no expense. Crystal chandeliers, a full orchestra, enough flowers to stock a botanical garden. I sat at a corner table, watching my 32-year-old son dance with his new wife. When Victoria approached with her parents in tow, "Mother, Father," she said in that sugar-sweet voice that made my teeth ache, "I'd like you to properly meet Michael's mother." Then she turned to the other guests at nearby tables, raising her voice just enough to ensure an audience. "This is Margaret, the family embarrassment we all have to deal with now." The laughter that followed felt like ice water in my veins, but it was nothing compared to what happened next. Richard Ashford's champagne glass stopped halfway to his lips. His eyes locked onto mine with sudden, sharp recognition. The colour drained from his face as he whispered, "Margaret Chen? You're the M. Chen from the Ashford Industries acquisition?" The laughter died instantly. "You're the silent investor who bought my company." Victoria's smile froze on her face like a broken doll. Catherine's hand flew to her throat, diamonds glittering in the light. And I stood there, invisible no more. The truth is, most people don't recognise real wealth. They expect Ferraris and Hermes bags, penthouses and private jets. They don't expect a woman who shops at Target and drives a 10-year-old Honda. That's exactly what I counted on. It started with my late husband James's invention, a revolutionary data compression algorithm that changed how smartphones process information. We were both software engineers working at a small tech firm in Seattle in the early 2000s. When James perfected his algorithm in 2010, we thought maybe we could retire early. We had no idea we were sitting on a gold mine. The patent sold in 2012 for $30 million. Michael was 24, fresh out of his MBA program, eager to make his own mark on the world. That same day, James and I made a decision that would define the next 13 years. We told Michael we'd gotten a nice payout, enough to be comfortable, nothing extravagant. He assumed maybe $1 million or $2 million. He never asked for specifics. What Michael didn't know was that $30 million was just the beginning. James and I took that money and invested strategically. Tech startups with solid fundamentals, real estate in emerging markets, biotech companies on the verge of breakthroughs. James had an uncanny ability to spot potential where others saw risk. By the time cancer took him 5 years ago, our portfolio had grown to $900 million. $900 million. The same fortune I used to acquire Ashford Industries 3 years after James died. The irony was delicious. While Victoria looked down on me for my modest lifestyle, I'd been the anonymous buyer who saved her father's company from bankruptcy. The company he'd nearly destroyed with reckless expansion and catastrophic debt management. He'd been forced to sell to what he thought was a faceless investment firm. That firm was me. I bought Ashford Industries not for revenge. I didn't even know Victoria existed then. But because underneath Richard's mismanagement was a solid company with good bones. Strong patents, loyal employees, established client relationships. Under proper leadership, it thrived again. The man whose daughter had just called me an embarrassment had been living off my business acumen for the past 2 years. "I think you're mistaken," I said quietly. meeting Richard's gaze. I'm just a retired software engineer, but we both knew the truth. I could see it in his eyes, the memory of that boardroom where I'd sat silently while my lawyers handled negotiations. He'd barely acknowledged me then, assuming I was someone's assistant there to take notes. Now, as Victoria stared between us with growing alarm, I realised my carefully maintained anonymity was about to shatter. The next morning, I sat in my modest 3-bedroom house, sipping coffee from my favourite mug, a gift from Michael that said, "World's okayest mum." He'd called at 6 a.m, demanding answers I wasn't ready to give. I hadn't slept. My mind kept replaying Richard's recognition, Victoria's panic, the way the entire reception shifted after those words. "You bought my company." "Mum, you need to help me understand what happened last night," Michael said, pacing my living room like a caged tiger. "Richard pulled me aside after you left. He asked about Dad's patents, about your investments. He seemed to think you're some kind of financial mogul." I'd slipped away shortly after Richard's revelation, claiming a headache. The truth was I needed time to think. 15 years of carefully guarded privacy, destroyed in an instant. What exactly did he ask? Though I could guess. He wanted to know about Dad's work, whether you were involved in any major acquisitions, about our family's real financial situation. Michael stopped pacing, fixing me with those earnest brown eyes he'd inherited from James. "Mum, he acted like you were some kind of secret billionaire. It was bizarre. My coffee tasted bitter." This was the conversation I'd both dreaded and expected since the moment I'd decided to keep our wealth hidden. "Michael, sit down. We need to talk." But before I could continue, my phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Margaret, we should have lunch today. There are things we need to discuss about our new family arrangement." I showed Michael the message. His face shifted from confusion to concern. "What do you think she wants?" I had a pretty good idea. Victoria Ashford wasn't the type to let sleeping dogs lie, especially when those dogs might be guarding a fortune. I said carefully. "Well, your wife is much smarter than we gave her credit for." His phone rang. Victoria's name flashed on screen. He answered, and I could hear her voice bright and artificially cheerful. "Darling, I've made reservations at Le Bernardin for 1 o'clock. I think it's time your mother and I had a proper chat about family matters." When he hung up, Michael looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since he was 16 and suspected I knew about the dent in my car. "Mum, is there something you haven't told me about our finances?" Outside my window, morning joggers passed by, living their normal lives with normal problems. I envied them. "Everything," I finally said. "I haven't told you everything." Victoria had arrived at Le Bernardin 45 minutes early, securing the best table with a view of the private dining room. She'd chosen the most expensive restaurant in the city, a power play that might have intimidated someone who couldn't buy the entire establishment without checking their bank balance. She wore a cream-coloured suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, her blonde hair styled to perfection. When Michael and I arrived, she stood to air-kiss us both, her smile sharp as a blade. "Margaret, Michael, so wonderful to see you both," she purred, gesturing to a bottle of wine already breathing on the table. I took the liberty of ordering the Chateau d'Yquem. "I hope you don't mind. $1,000 bottle of wine for lunch." "Another test. How thoughtful," I said, taking my seat. "Though perhaps a bit much for a casual family lunch." "Oh, I don't think anything about our family is casual anymore," Victoria replied, her green eyes glittering. "Not after last night's revelations." Michael looked between us, sensing the undercurrent of tension. "Victoria, what's this about?" She ignored him completely, focusing on me with laser intensity. "You know, Margaret, I did some research after the reception. Fascinating what you can find with the right connections." I sipped the wine, waiting. Let her show her cards first. The M. Chen who bought Ashford Industries was remarkably discreet. Shell companies layered on shell companies, very sophisticated for a retired software engineer. She leaned forward slightly. "But then, you're not really just a retired engineer, are you?" "I'm exactly what I've always said I am," I replied calmly. Victoria's smile widened. "Of course, just like that acquisition was exactly what it appeared to be, a random investment firm buying a struggling company." She pulled out her phone, showing me a financial news article from 2 years ago. Funny thing, though, the acquisition happened right after James Chen's revolutionary data compression patent started generating massive licensing fees from every major tech company in the world. Michael's wine glass stopped halfway to his mouth. "Mom, your mother is quite the mystery," Victoria continued, clearly enjoying herself. "A woman who lives modestly, drives an old Honda, shops at Target. yet somehow had access to enough capital to buy a company worth $700 million. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. "That's quite a theory," I said finally. "It's more than a theory." Victoria's voice dropped to a confidential whisper. "I had lunch with Daddy's former CFO yesterday. He remembered the buyer's representative from the acquisition meetings, a quiet woman who let her lawyers do all the talking. He said she had a particular way of tilting her head when listening, exactly like you're doing right now." Michael was staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. "Mom, is she right? Did you buy her father's company?" I set down my wine glass and looked at my son. The boy I'd raised to value honesty and hard work. The man who'd built his own successful career without knowing he had a fortune behind him. "Yes," I said simply. "I bought Ashford Industries." Victoria's triumph blazed across her face, but I wasn't finished. "What your wife hasn't told you, Michael, is why her father's company was for sale. Richard Ashford over-leveraged the business with aggressive expansions. He was 90 days from bankruptcy when I stepped in. I saved 3,000 jobs and preserved a company with genuine value. While letting my family believe we'd lost everything to corporate raiders," Victoria snapped, her composure cracking. "Your family lost control because of your father's mismanagement, not because of me. I paid fair market value and turned the company profitable again. Your father still receives generous consulting fees, which, by the way, I personally approved." Michael's face was a study in shock. "Mom, how much are we talking about here?" Victoria leaned back, crossing her arms. "Oh, I think your mother has quite a bit more than just one company, don't you, Margaret? Someone who can casually drop $700 million on an acquisition isn't working with pocket change." I met her predatory gaze steadily. "What exactly do you want, Victoria? I want the truth. My husband deserves to know who his mother really is. And as his wife, I deserve to know what kind of family I've married into." "Do you?" I asked softly. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're more interested in what you've married into rather than who." The mask slipped completely then, revealing the calculating woman beneath the polished exterior. "I think we should discuss this as a family," she said. "Perhaps somewhere more private. There are decisions to be made about how to handle this situation." Michael finally found his voice. "Decisions? What decisions? Mum, what is she talking about?" But I knew exactly what Victoria was planning. She smelled money and was already strategizing how to access it. The question was, how far would she go? "I think," I said, standing and placing my napkin on the table, "that we've discussed enough for today. Michael, when you're ready to talk, just you and me, you know where to find me." As I walked out of that restaurant, leaving behind the $1,000 wine and my son's stunned face, I realized the game had only just begun. Victoria Ashford had declared war. She just didn't know who she was fighting. 3 days later, I sat in the downtown office of my financial advisor, Harrison Webb, watching him pull up file after file on his computer. The lunch with Victoria had lit a fuse, and I needed to know exactly how much damage she could do. "Margaret, I have to ask," Harrison said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "This sudden interest in the Ashford family finances, does it have anything to do with your son's recent marriage?" I'd called Harrison the morning after that disastrous lunch, requesting a complete workup on the Ashfords' current financial situation. What he'd found was worse than I'd imagined. "Let's just say I like to know who I'm dealing with," I replied. He pulled up a comprehensive financial report. "Well, what you're dealing with is a family in deep denial about their actual wealth, or lack thereof. Walk me through it. Richard Ashford built his company on borrowed money and borrowed time. Even before you acquired it, he'd been mortgaging assets to maintain cash flow. The family home? Mortgaged to 80% of its value. Their investment portfolio? Liquidated to maintain appearances." He looked at me over his glasses. "Margaret, they've been living on fumes and consulting fees for the past 2 years. And Victoria? Ah, the daughter." He pulled up another file. "Expensive education, Wharton MBA, all paid for with loans her father co-signed. She worked at the family company for 2 years before the acquisition, presumably being groomed to take over. Your purchase didn't just buy a company, it derailed her entire life plan. The pieces were falling into place. So when she married Michael, she thought she was marrying a comfortable middle-class man with a stable family. Imagine her surprise to discover her mother-in-law is the very person who bought her inheritance out from under her." I thought about Victoria's calculated charm, her pointed questions about my finances, the way she'd introduced me as an embarrassment. It all made sense now. "Harrison, I need you to do something for me. Quietly check if anyone's been making inquiries about my holdings." "Professional inquiries." His fingers flew over the keyboard. After a few minutes, his expression darkened. Margaret, someone's been digging. Discreet but thorough. They've been tracking the shell companies, trying to trace ownership structures. This isn't amateur hour, they've hired professionals. My stomach tightened. How much can they find? Your privacy structures are solid, but nothing's impenetrable. With enough time and resources, they could potentially trace everything back to you. The question is, what do they plan to do with that information? I knew exactly what Victoria planned to do. She was building a case. For what, I wasn't sure yet. But I'd learned long ago that the best defence was information. I need everything on the Ashfords. Every debt, every asset, every financial move they've made in the last 5 years. And Harrison, I need it yesterday. That evening, Michael showed up at my door looking haggard. He'd lost weight in just 3 days, and the shadows under his eyes told me he hadn't been sleeping. We need to talk, he said without preamble. I let him in, poured him coffee, and waited. I'd learned from James that sometimes silence was the best prompt. Victoria's been acting strange, he finally said. She's on the phone constantly with someone, always hangs up when I enter the room. She's moved money from our joint account into her personal one. And Mom, he looked at me with pain in his eyes. I found a business card in her purse. A divorce attorney who specialises in high net worth cases. The coffee mug trembled in his hands. My son, my brilliant boy who'd worked so hard for everything he had, was watching his marriage crumble after less than a week. I'm sorry, I said softly. Are you? The bitterness in his voice cut deep. Because it feels like you've been waiting for this. Like you knew who she was all along and let me marry her anyway. I didn't know about her connection to Ashford Industries until the wedding. And even if I had, would you have believed I didn't know about her connection to Ashford Industries until the wedding? And even if I had, would you have believed me? You were in love, was I? He set down his mug with shaking hands. Or was I just another acquisition for her? Mom, I need to know the truth, all of it. How much money are we really talking about? I'd spent 15 years protecting him from this knowledge, letting him build his own life, his own success. Now, looking at his broken expression, I wondered if protection and deception were just different words for the same mistake. Your father's patent sold for $30 million, I began. We invested it. By the time he died, we had built that into $900 million. Today, with the Ashford acquisition and other investments, the portfolio is worth approximately $1.2 billion. The number hung in the air between us like a physical presence. Michael's face went through a series of expressions: shock, disbelief, anger, and finally, a terrible understanding. Billion. With a B. He laughed, but there was no humour in it. My entire life I thought we were middle class. I worked summers in college. I took out student loans you could have paid off with pocket change. I drove a used car for 10 years while you had $1 billion sitting in investment accounts. We wanted you to have a normal life, to understand the value of work, of earning your own way. And look how well that turned out, he said bitterly. I married a woman who saw me as a meal ticket, not knowing I was actually the full buffet. My phone buzzed. Harrison had sent the files I'd requested. As I scrolled through them, my blood ran cold. Michael, there's something else you need to know. Victoria hasn't just hired a divorce attorney. She's hired investigators. She's building a case, and from what Harrison's found, she's been in contact with federal regulators. Regulators? For what? She's trying to prove I violated securities laws with the shell companies I used to buy her father's business. It's baseless, but an investigation alone could take years and cost millions to fight. Michael stood abruptly, pacing to the window. So what do? We get ahead of it. But first I need to know, are you with me or are you with her? He turned to face me, and in his eyes I saw James's determination. She played me, Mum. She married me thinking I was one thing, and now she's trying to destroy my family because we're something else. What do you think? For the first time in days, I smiled. I think your wife is about to learn why I've been successful in business for 15 years. What's the plan? First, we document everything. Every conversation, every financial transaction, every suspicious activity. Then we make her an offer she can't refuse. You're going to pay her off? No, I said, pulling up Harrison's reports. I'm going to show her exactly what she's fighting for. The Ashford family is 3 months from bankruptcy. The estate, the cars, the lifestyle, it's all smoke and mirrors held together by the consulting fees I authorise. She's not fighting for a share of wealth. She's fighting for survival. Michael studied the reports, his marketing-trained mind quickly grasping the implications. My God, they're completely dependent on you. Which means Victoria has 2 choices. She can accept a generous settlement and walk away, or she can continue her investigation and watch her family lose everything when I cut them off. That's ruthless. I met his gaze steadily. Your father taught me that in business, you don't start fights, but if someone brings one to your door, you finish it. The meeting was scheduled for the following Monday in Harrison's conference room. Victoria arrived with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named David Steinberg, who specialised in high-stakes divorces. Her parents flanked her like bodyguards, Richard's face setting grim lines while Catherine clutched her designer purse like a lifeline. I'd brought my own team, Harrison, my corporate attorney Linda Chen, no relation despite the name, and Michael. The battle lines were drawn. Let's cut to the chase, Steinberg began, spreading documents across the table. My client has uncovered significant financial irregularities in the Chen family holdings. Shell companies, hidden assets, possible securities violations. We believe a full investigation is warranted. Your client, Linda responded coolly, has uncovered nothing but legal business structures. What she's actually done is hire investigators to harass a private citizen and make false reports to federal agencies. That's defamation at minimum, potentially criminal harassment. Victoria leaned forward. I'm trying to protect my husband's interests. He has a right to know about his family's assets. The same husband you're preparing to divorce? I asked quietly. The room went still. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. I slid a photograph across the table, Victoria entering the offices of Steinberg and Associates 2 days before she'd confronted me at lunch. Really? Because it seems like you were planning your exit strategy before you even confirmed your suspicions. Steinberg tried to recover. Mrs. Chen, regardless of timing, the fact remains that you've concealed significant assets that could be considered marital property. Nothing was concealed, Linda interjected. Mrs. Chen has no obligation to disclose her private finances to her son's girlfriend of 8 months. The marriage is less than a week old. There are no marital assets to discuss. But there is the matter of fraud, Victoria said, her voice sharp. She presented herself as a middle-class retiree while secretly controlling enough wealth to manipulate entire industries. That's deception. I'd heard enough. You want to talk about deception? Let's talk about deception. I opened my folder and began laying out documents. This is your family's real financial situation. Every debt, every default, every desperate measure to maintain appearances. Richard's face went ashen as he recognised the documents. Catherine gasped. Your father owes $2.3 million on the estate. Your mother's jewellery collection, sold and replaced with replicas 2 years ago. The cars? Leased, not owned. The country club membership? 6 months behind on dues. I looked directly at Victoria. You didn't marry my son for love. You married him because you needed financial stability, and you thought he was a safe, middle-class option who would never discover your family's situation. I'm not finished. I pulled out more documents. These are the consulting contracts your father depends on. I authorise them. I can cancel them with one phone call. The board positions he holds. I recommended him. The business connections keeping your family afloat. They're mine. The silence in the room was deafening. So here's my offer, I continued. You withdraw all complaints and investigations immediately. You agree to a quiet divorce with no financial claims on Michael. In exchange, I'll provide a one-time settlement of $5 million and continue your father's consulting contracts for another 5 years. Steinberg was already doing the math. $5 million cash plus 5 years of income was more than they could hope to win in any legal battle. Or, I said, my voice hardening, you continue this investigation. I'll defend myself successfully, because I've done nothing illegal. But I'll also cancel every contract, call in every favour, and ensure that the Ashford name becomes synonymous with financial ruin. Your choice. Victoria's hands trembled as she looked at the documents. Her parents sat frozen, the reality of their dependence finally sinking in. You're blackmailing us, she whispered. No, I corrected. I'm offering you a generous exit from a situation you created. You investigated me. You threatened me. You tried to destroy my relationship with my son. I'm simply showing you the consequences of your actions. Michael spoke for the first time. Take the deal, Victoria. It's more than fair. She turned to him, tears forming in her carefully made-up eyes. Michael, don't, he said quietly. Just don't. We both know what this was now. At least have the dignity to end it cleanly, Steinberg whispered urgently in Victoria's ear. After a long moment, she nodded. We'll take the deal, she said, her voice barely audible. Linda pushed the settlement documents across the table. Sign here, here and here. The funds will be transferred within 48 hours of signature. The divorce papers are attached. Uncontested, no fault, clean break. As Victoria signed, her mother finally spoke. How do we know you'll keep your word about the contract? I looked at Catherine Ashford, this woman who'd sneered at my simple dress and modest jewellery. Because unlike your daughter, I honour my agreements. It's how I built my fortune in the first place. The signing was completed in silence. As they prepared to leave, Richard stopped at the door. For what it's worth, he said quietly. You saved my company. I'm grateful for that, even if the circumstances are complicated. I nodded. Take care of it this time. You won't get another chance. When they were gone, Michael slumped in his chair. It's really over. 6 months of dating, 2 months of engagement, 1 week of marriage. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. I never wanted this for you. I know. He managed a weak smile. At least I found out early, right? Before kids, before years of lies. Linda gathered the documents. I'll file these today. The divorce should be final in 60 days. As we left the conference room, Michael asked, What now? Now, I said, we start over.
No more secrets between us.
And next time you meet someone, maybe introduce her to your mother before the wedding. He actually laughed. Deal. But Mom? Next time, maybe mention the $1 billion before someone calls you a family embarrassment. Deal, I agreed. And for the first time since that disastrous wedding reception, I felt the weight of secrets lifting from my shoulders. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen making coffee when Michael called. Mom, you free for lunch today? Always, I said, smiling at the ease in his voice. The divorce had been finalised 4 months ago, and he'd thrown himself into work and therapy with equal determination. Great. There's someone I want you to meet. My hand paused over the coffee pot. Oh? Her name's Elena. She's a paediatric nurse at Children's Hospital. We met at the gym. He paused. Mom, I told her everything. About Dad's patent, about the money, about Victoria. Everything. And she said she needed time to think about it. Then she called me 3 days later and said, I don't care if you have $1 billion or $10. But if you ever lie to me about anything important, we're done. I smiled. I like her already. You'll like her more when you meet her. She drives a 15-year-old Toyota and thinks designer handbags are a waste of money that could go to childhood cancer research. Bring her by, I said. I'll make my famous lasagna. About that, Michael said, and I could hear his grin. She's vegetarian, and she already told me she's not changing that for anyone, billionaire mother-in-law or not. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. I really like her already. That evening I met Elena Martinez. She was nothing like Victoria. Warm where Victoria was calculating, genuine where Victoria was polished. She showed up in scrubs because she'd come straight from a shift, apologising for her appearance. Nonsense, I said, hugging her. Anyone who saves children's lives can wear whatever they want in my house. Over vegetarian lasagna, a new recipe I'd learned just for this occasion, Elena told us about her work, her family in New Mexico, her dream of opening a free clinic in underserved communities. When Michael excused himself to take a work call, she turned to me with serious eyes. Mrs. Chen, I need you to know something. I'm not Victoria. I'm not interested in your money. I'm interested in your son, but I need to know, are there any other secrets? Anything else that might come out later? I appreciated her directness. No more secrets. What you see is what you get. A retired software engineer who made some very good investments and values privacy. And who would do anything to protect her son. Eleanor added. That too, I admitted. She smiled. Good, then we'll get along fine. But fair warning, I'm terrible at fancy restaurants and I don't know anything about wine. If you're looking for someone to help spend your fortune, you've got the wrong girl. If I wanted someone to help spend my fortune, I'd have been very happy with Victoria, I said dryly. Elena laughed, and I knew Michael had found something real this time. A year later, I attended my son's second wedding. It was a small affair in Elena's family's backyard in Albuquerque. No ice sculptures, no orchestra, no designer dresses. Just family, friends, and genuine joy. As I watched them exchange vows they'd written themselves, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The secrets I'd kept, the lies that had unravelled, the family I'd almost lost in my desire to protect it. You must be Michael's mother, a woman said, sitting down beside me. She was Elena's aunt, a teacher from Santa Fe. Elena told us about you, said you're one of the smartest women she's ever met. That's kind of her to say. She also said you're loaded but you'd never know it. The aunt continued with a grin. I respect that. Money changes people, usually not for the better. I thought about Victoria, about the Ashfords, about all the people who'd seen dollar signs instead of human beings. It doesn't have to. It's all about choices. Speaking of choices, she said, pointing to the dance floor where Michael was spinning Elena, both of them laughing. Looks like your boy made a good one this time. Yes, I agreed, watching my son's genuine happiness. We both did. Later that evening, as the party wound down, Eleanor found me sitting quietly in the garden. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For raising a man who values honesty, for showing him that money isn't everything, for being willing to let him go so he could find his own way. She sat beside me, and for accepting me, even though I'm nothing like what you probably imagined for him. You're everything I imagined, I said honestly. Someone who loves him for who he is, not what he has. Someone who challenges him to be better. Someone who would stand by him even if every cent disappeared tomorrow. Every cent could disappear? I smiled. It's all just numbers on a screen until you use it for something meaningful. That clinic you want to open? Let's talk about that. Her eyes widened. Mrs. Chen, Margaret, I corrected. Or Mom, if you're comfortable with that. And I'm not offering charity. I'm offering an investment in something that matters. James would have loved the idea. Tears formed in her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Do your research. Put together a proposal. Treat me like any other potential investor. I stood, smoothing my simple dress. But know that you'll have at least one investor who believes in the vision. As I walked back to the reception, I heard Eleanor call out, Margaret? For what it's worth, I would have been proud to be introduced as your daughter-in-law, even if you were a family embarrassment. I turned back, smiling. For what it's worth, you're the daughter-in-law I always hoped for, even if you do drive a 15-year-old Toyota. We laughed together, and in that moment, I realised that all the secrets, all the pain, all the confrontations had led to this. A real family, built on truth instead of lies, love instead of money, acceptance instead of judgment. The Ashfords were still out there somewhere, living their carefully managed lives on my continuing generosity. Victoria had remarried within a year, a hedge fund manager old enough to be her father. I'd heard through the grapevine that she'd insisted on a prenup this time. Apparently she'd learned something from our encounter, but that was their story. Mine was here, in this backyard in New Mexico, watching my son dance with a woman who'd demanded honesty from day one and given it in return. As the stars came out over the desert, I thought about James. He would have loved Elena's straightforward nature, her dedication to helping others, her complete disinterest in the trappings of wealth. He would have been proud of Michael for learning from his mistakes, for choosing love over comfort, for becoming the man we'd always hoped he'd be. Hey, Mom. Michael appeared at my elbow. Eleanor's dad wants to know if you play poker. Fair warning, he's a shark, I grinned. Bring it on. I've been playing poker for 15 years. I just let everyone think I was playing Go Fish. Michael laughed, throwing his arm around me. No more secrets. No more secrets, I confirmed. Although I might still let him think he's winning for a hand or two. No need to destroy the man's ego on the first meeting. That's my mum, Michael said, squeezing my shoulder. Strategic even in family poker games. As we walked toward the house where Elena's father was setting up the poker table, Michael added quietly, Mum, I need to tell you something. I'm happy, really genuinely happy. For the first time since Dad died, I feel like everything's where it should be. I stopped, turning to face my son in the soft glow of the string lights Elena's family had hung across the yard. That's all I ever wanted for you. I know that now. Even when I was angry about the secrets, I knew you did it out of love. Misguided, maybe, but love nonetheless. Your father and I made the best decisions we could with the information we had, I said. We wanted you to know the value of hard work, to build your own success. Maybe we went too far in hiding the truth, but I wouldn't be who I am without that journey, Michael finished. I get it now, and honestly, I'm glad I didn't know. Can you imagine if I'd grown up knowing we had that kind of money? I probably would have ended up like Victoria, thinking the world owed me something. We joined the poker game, where Elena's father, Roberto, proceeded to win 3 hands in a row with a combination of skill and outrageous bluffing. Elena's mother, Maria, kept bringing out plates of food, insisting everyone eat more despite the fact we'd just finished dinner. So, Margaret, Roberto said, dealing another hand, Elena tells me you're in investments. Retired, I said, checking my cards. These days I just manage the portfolio and look for interesting opportunities. Like medical clinics? He asked with a knowing smile. Like medical clinics, I agreed. Among other things, Elena appeared behind her father's chair. Papa, are you interrogating my mother-in-law? Just making conversation, Roberto said innocently. Besides, she's winning. I need to distract her somehow. I laid down a full house, collecting the pot with a smile. I'm afraid I'm very hard to distract. So we're learning, Maria laughed. Roberto, I think you've met your match. As the evening progressed, I found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't in years. This family didn't care about my portfolio or my connections. They cared that I made Michael happy, that I treated Elena with respect, that I could hold my own in their poker game and appreciate Maria's homemade salsa. Later, as the party wound down, I helped Maria clean up in the kitchen. She worked with the efficiency of someone who'd hosted countless family gatherings, and I fell into rhythm beside her. Thank you for raising such a wonderful daughter, I said, drying dishes as she washed. Thank you for raising such a wonderful son, she replied. Eleanor's had her heart broken before. Men who couldn't handle her dedication to her work, who wanted her to be less than she was. Michael celebrates her ambitions. He learned from his mistakes, I said, thinking of Victoria. Maria nodded knowingly. Eleanor told me a little about his first marriage. Sometimes we need to see what we don't want to recognise what we do want. That's very wise. It's experience, Maria said, handing me another plate. Roberto and I have been married 35 years. You learn a lot about people in that time, about what matters and what doesn't. What matters? I asked, genuinely curious. Kindness, respect, shared values, the ability to laugh together when things get hard. She paused, looking out the window where Roberto was teaching Michael some complicated card trick. Money makes life easier, but it doesn't make a marriage. Trust does. Honesty does. Choosing each other every day does. I thought about my marriage to James, built on exactly those principles. About how we'd chosen to face every challenge together, from start-up struggles to sudden wealth. You're absolutely right. Of course I am, Maria said with a wink. Now let me pack you some leftovers. You're too thin. I laughed, accepting the containers she pressed into my hands. This was what family felt like. Not the cold calculations of the Ashfords, but the warm chaos of people who genuinely cared for each other. 2 years passed in a blur of quiet contentment. Elena's clinic opened in a renovated warehouse in South Albuquerque, funded by a partnership between my foundation and several other investors she'd brought on board. I'd insisted she run it like a real business, and she'd exceeded every projection. Michael's marketing firm landed several major contracts, success he'd earned entirely on his own merit. He and Elena bought a modest house in the suburbs, refusing my offer to help with the down payment. We want to do this ourselves, Elena had said firmly. But thank you. I respected their decision, though I may have anonymously donated to the clinic's equipment fund. Some habits die hard. On a quiet Thursday afternoon, I was reviewing investment proposals when my phone rang.
The number was unfamiliar, but something made me answer. Mrs. Chen.
This is Richard Ashford. I hadn't heard from any of the Ashfords since the divorce settlement. Mr. Ashford, this is unexpected. I'm sure it is. He paused, and I could hear the weight in his voice. I'm calling because I wanted to thank you. Thank me. The consulting contracts you maintained saved us from bankruptcy. More than that, they gave me a chance to rebuild. Not the company, that's yours now, but my reputation. My self-respect. Another pause. I've started a small consulting firm. Legitimate this time. No over-leveraging, no grand ambitions. Just honest work. I'm glad to hear that. I also wanted to apologise. For Victoria, for how she treated you and Michael. Catherine and I, we enabled her worst instincts. We taught her that money mattered more than character. That was our failure. I sat back in my chair, surprised by his honesty. How is Victoria? Divorced again. Her second husband was less generous than you were. She's living in Manhattan, working in real estate. Still chasing the lifestyle, but at least she's working for it now. And you and Catherine? We downsized, sold the estate, paid off the debts. We have a nice condo in Richmond now. Catherine volunteers at the library. I consult for small businesses. It's peaceful. I'm genuinely glad to hear that, Richard. There's one more thing, he said. I've been approached by a journalist. Someone's writing a book about anonymous billionaires, people who hide their wealth. They know about the Ashford Industries acquisition, and they're digging into who was behind it. I wanted to warn you. My stomach tightened. After all this time, was my privacy about to be shattered by someone looking for a story? What did you tell them? Nothing. And I won't. You saved my company and my family even after how we treated you. I owe you that discretion at least. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. It's the least I can do. Take care, Mrs. Chen, and please give Michael my best. He's a good man. He deserved better than what my daughter offered. He found better, I said. He's happy now. Good, that's good. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a long moment. The journalist was concerning, but Richard's call had reminded me of something important. Even our worst encounters can lead to growth if we let them. I called Harrison. We might have a problem. Someone's investigating the anonymous billionaire angle. I'll look into it, he said immediately. Want me to prepare countermeasures? Just monitor for now. I'm tired of hiding, Harrison. Maybe it's time to control the narrative instead of running from it. That evening, I had dinner with Michael and Elena. Over Elena's excellent vegetable curry, I told them about Richard's call and the journalist. What are you going to do? Michael asked. I'm not sure yet. For 15 years, I've hidden behind shell companies and NDAs. Maybe it's time to step into the light? Elena reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Whatever you decide, we're here. Right, Michael. Absolutely, my son agreed. Though I should warn you, if you go public, you'll probably get a lot of marriage proposals from gold diggers. At my age, I laughed. Mom, you're 62, not dead. And you're a billionaire. Trust me, they'll come crawling out of the woodwork. Speaking from experience, Elena teased him. Hey, I attracted exactly one gold digger and I married her. Michael shot back. My track record is terrible. Was terrible, Eleanor corrected. Your track record is perfect now. Watching them banter, I made my decision. I'm going to do it. Not a tell-all, but a controlled revelation. Maybe an interview with a respectable publication on my terms. Why now? Michael asked. Because I'm tired of looking over my shoulder. Because your father's been gone for 7 years, and I've been living like his ghost might be disappointed if I bought a nicer car. Because I want to use this wealth for something meaningful while I'm still young enough to see the impact. The Elena Martinez free clinic model? Eleanor asked, her eyes lighting up, among other things. There are brilliant people out there with world-changing ideas who just need funding. There are problems that money can actually solve if applied intelligently. I want to be part of that. Michael raised his water glass. To stepping into the light. To controlling our own narratives, Elena added. To family, I concluded. And we clinked glasses. The interview was published 3 months later in the Financial Times. I'd chosen them for their serious journalism and financial focus. No sensationalism, just facts. The headline read, The Invisible Billionaire, Margaret Chen on Privacy, Purpose and the Power of Patient Capital. I told them about James's invention, our careful investments, the decision to keep Michael in the dark. I talked about the acquisition of Ashford Industries as a business decision, not mentioning the personal complications that followed. I spoke about the future, funding innovation, supporting healthcare initiatives, investing in sustainable technologies. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My email inbox exploded. Investment proposals, charity requests, interview requests, and yes, several marriage proposals. I told you, Michael said, scrolling through the messages on my laptop. This one's from a duke, an actual duke. Delete, I said firmly. This one's from a tech startup that wants to revolutionize senior care. Flag for review. This one's from... Oh God, Mum, this one's from Victoria. I looked at the screen. Sure enough, there was an email from Victoria Ashford Chen Pemberton. Apparently, she'd kept Michael's name in her ever-growing hyphenation. Dear Margaret, it read. I saw your interview in the FT. I wanted to reach out to congratulate you on your success and to apologise for any misunderstandings during our brief time as family. I'm now working in luxury real estate and would be honoured to help you find appropriate properties for your investment portfolio. Best regards, Victoria. Michael and I looked at each other and burst out laughing. The nerve, he said, shaking his head. The absolute nerve. Delete? I suggested. Delete, he confirmed, with extreme prejudice. As we sorted through the messages, flagging the serious ones and discarding the ridiculous, I felt a sense of peace. No more secrets. No more hiding. Just purpose and possibility. Any regrets? Michael asked. About going public? No, about the past. Some. I looked at my son, successful and happy with a woman who loved him for himself, but regrets are just lessons in disguise. And I've learned mine. What's the most important lesson? I thought about it. About James and our shared dreams, about the years of careful planning and patient investment, about Victoria and her calculating charm, about Elena and her genuine warmth, about the difference between being rich and being wealthy in the ways that mattered. That money is just a tool, I said finally. It's what you build with it that counts. Relationships, impact, legacy, the rest is just numbers on a screen. Pretty impressive numbers, Michael pointed out. Pretty impressive son, I countered. Worth more than all of it combined. He hugged me then, my boy who'd grown into a man without the burden of inherited wealth, who'd learned hard lessons but emerged stronger for them. I love you too, Mom, even if you are a secret billionaire who bought my ex-wife's family business. Former secret billionaire, I corrected. Now I'm just a regular billionaire who happens to be very good at poker. And terrible at vegetarian cooking, Elena called from the kitchen where she was preparing dinner. I'm getting better. I protested. You are, she agreed, appearing in the doorway. But maybe stick to investing. It's clearly where your talents lie. As we gathered for another family dinner, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From that humiliating introduction at Michael's first wedding, the family embarrassment, to this moment of open acceptance and genuine love. Victoria had been wrong about so many things, but she'd been most wrong about that. I wasn't an embarrassment. I was a mother who'd protected her son the best way she knew how. A widow who'd honoured her husband's memory by growing his legacy. A woman who'd chosen privacy until privacy no longer served her purpose. Now, as I watched Michael and Elena work together in the kitchen, laughing over some shared joke, I knew the truth. The only embarrassment would have been letting Victoria's poison destroy this. This family, this love, this life built on truth instead of lies. My phone buzzed with another message, another proposal, another request, another opportunity to use wealth for something meaningful. I silenced it. Work could wait. Right now I had vegetable curry to eat, a daughter-in-law to tease about her 15-year-old Toyota, and a son to beat at poker. The billions could wait. This was priceless. And somewhere out there, Victoria Ashford Chen Pemberton was probably still calculating the value of everything while understanding the worth of nothing. I wished her well, in the way you wish well to a tornado that's passed by without destroying your home. May she find whatever she was looking for, as long as she looked for it far from my family. Mom, Michael called. You coming? Eleanor made your favourite. Extra mild curry for the woman who thinks black pepper is spicy. I'm building my tolerance, I called back, joining them at the table. Sure you are, Elena laughed. Just like you're learning to appreciate my ancient Toyota. That car has character, I said diplomatically. That car has rust, Michael corrected. But Elena loves it, so we love it. Exactly, I agreed. That's what family does. And as we sat down to another meal together, I knew that this, not the money, not the power, not the ability to buy and sell companies, this was my greatest achievement. A family built on love, trust, and the radical idea that people matter more than portfolios. The rest was just details. Expensive, complicated, billion-dollar details, but details nonetheless. The heart of it, the truth of it, was right here at this table. And that was worth more than all the money and all the hidden accounts in the world. To family, I said, raising my glass of water. Elena had gotten me to give up wine with dinner, another victory for healthy living over luxury. To family, they echoed, and in that moment, I was the richest woman in the world in every way that mattered. The end. If you enjoyed this story of family, secrets and triumph over those who would use us, please like and subscribe, share in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing how far these stories travel. Remember, the best revenge isn't destroying those who wrong us, but building a life so good they become irrelevant. Until next time, keep choosing love over money, truth over lies, and family over everything.